He said, "I'm not like other men." The Apache girl replied, "Prove it to me tonight." Dust swirled around their boots as the fire crackled low, his promise hanging in the air like gun smoke. Out here, words meant nothing. Only what a man was willing to bleed for counted. She didn't smile, she didn't fear him. Under the rising moon, her challenge cut through the silence. Was he different? Or just another liar in a stolen coat? The night had a way of exposing truth on the frontier. Without the noise of town or the cover of lantern-lit rooms, lies didn't last long under the stars. The fire between them burned low, casting tired light over weathered hands and eyes that had seen too much. He sat still, hat tilted low, trying to steady his breath, not because he feared her, but because something in her gaze made every careless word feel heavier. She moved with quiet, deliberate precision, placing a log on the fire like setting a piece on a board no man ever won against. No trembling, no hesitation. She was the kind of calm that only came from surviving the sort of storms that broke others. The cowboy had seen men twice her size beg for mercy. She never would. Mercy to her was something you earned in sweat and blood, not something you asked for. The flames licked the dry wood, sparks snapping in the cold air. Somewhere in the distance, metal struck against metal, a horse shifting near tack or something less innocent. The cowboy's fingers brushed the inside of his coat where a folded document rested. A bounty notice. A signature. A choice he hadn't yet admitted out loud. Men like him were often defined by paper, by contracts, debts, promises. She was defined by something older, by land, by fire, by the way she did not flinch when the world tried to break her. He replayed her words in his head. "Prove it to me tonight." No name, no plea. Just a line in the sand drawn by someone who had stopped believing in easy redemption. The fire cast long shadows behind her as she finally settled down across from him, her face unreadable. The land around them, dry grass, cold stones, the whisper of wind moving through the plains, felt like it held its breath. He wasn't sure if this night would redeem him or expose him. And the worst part was this: he knew she would not look away either way. The wind shifted, carrying with it the scent of iron, the kind that lingered after gunfire or fresh blood. He noticed it first, the subtle sting at the back of his throat, but she was already turning her head before he reacted, as if the land itself spoke to her in ways no man could understand. She didn't reach for a weapon. Instead, her fingers brushed the dirt beside her, tracing something invisible, a habit or a signal he couldn't tell. The cowboy's hand hovered near his coat again. Not for a gun, for that folded piece of paper that had burned against his ribs all day. He could feel its edges through the fabric like a brand. He wondered, not for the first time, whether she had sensed it. Whether she knew that when he found her by the dry riverbed that morning, tied and traded like livestock between men who spoke her language only to command her, he had not acted out of pure mercy. He had been paid to retrieve something. Not someone. A crack of wood broke the silence. She had snapped a twig in her hand without looking down at it, eyes still on the horizon. He followed her gaze. Just beyond the dying firelight, where the moonlight cut across the open plain like a silver blade, he saw movement, faint but deliberate. A rider, slow, cautious, keeping to the dips in the land where shadows pooled. Her chin lifted slightly, not in alarm, in acknowledgement. She already knew. He swallowed. Throat dry. "Could be passing through," he muttered, voice low out of instinct more than strategy. She didn't answer. Her silence said enough. She had met too many who said they were just passing through, right before they took something that didn't belong to them. The rider slowed again. The horse's silhouette appeared and disappeared with the roll of the terrain. Not a drunk wanderer, not a lost traveler, someone with purpose. Someone following smoke or tracks or rumor. She finally spoke. "Men don't ride this land at night unless they hunt something." He tried to read her tone. It wasn't fear. It was certainty. The cowboy shifted his weight, boots scraping lightly against the packed earth. His past had always ridden behind him like that, quiet, steady, inevitable. He had thought that by leaving town before dawn, by cutting across the creek and taking paths only he knew, he could outrun the paper inside his coat and the man who signed it. But the Apache girl across from him was not running. She sat grounded, as if even if the world came crashing down around her, she would not move until she chose to. She glanced at the fire, at the direction of the wind. Smoke carries far tonight. He understood what she meant. It wasn't a warning. It was a test. She wanted to see what he would do when something threatened their ground, whether his instinct was to stand or to flee. He looked at the fire, then at her. The reflection of the flames danced in her eyes like a silent accusation. Without a word, he reached beside him and dragged his boot across the dirt, pushing sand over part of the flame, lowering its glow, not extinguishing it, just dimming it enough that the smoke would drift lower, blending with the night. Her eyes followed the motion, calm, unreadable, a small thing, but it mattered. His heart thudded once against his ribs. He didn't know why it felt like stepping across an invisible line. From the darkness, the faint jingle of a horse's bit rang again, closer this time. The rider had dismounted, boots now, soft against the earth. She lifted her head fully now, the firelight catching the dark braids over her shoulders like strands of shadow. Her voice was almost a whisper. "They're not here for me." The cowboy's blood ran cold. He realized then she had always known he wasn't the only one hunting something, and tonight, whatever rode toward them out of the dark, wasn't here by chance. The sound of a boot pressing softly into gravel echoed through the night, just beyond the edge of firelight. Someone was standing there, watching. The watcher didn't move. The fire hissed low. Wind pressed the grass flat, then let it rise again like breath. He shifted closer to her, slow and open. "I'll take front," he said. She didn't look at him. "You already did." He understood. He lifted his canteen, unscrewed the cap. "Drink," he offered. Her eyes stayed on the dark. "You drink first." He took a small swallow, then passed it back. She drank, wiped her mouth. Set it down between them. "Stay behind the light," he murmured. "I don't hide," she said. "Not hide. Make them show their shape." A pebble slid beyond the fire's edge. Then quiet. He reached into his coat, stopped, removed only a match, broke it, let the crack announce nothing. "Come in," he called, hands shown. Silence. Bootsteps circled, careful, testing the wind. He rose to one knee, keeping the fire between his chest and the sound. He didn't reach for the gun. His palm rested open on his thigh. She stood too, no tremor. She placed one hand on his shoulder, grounded him. "Breathe," she said. He breathed. A shape entered the orange halo, tall, hat pulled low. One hand lifted, empty, the other tucked behind a leather folder. "Evening," the man said, voice smooth, courteous, dangerous. "Evening," the cowboy answered. "No wish to frighten," the man said, "only to talk." "Talk then," she said. The man's eyes flicked to her, measured. He changed his stance, polite. "You're far from town," he said. "So are you," she replied. The man smiled, thin as wire. "I follow the paper, miss. Paper drifts far on good wind." He opened the folder. A document gleamed in the fire's blink. The cowboy felt heat climb his neck. "Name?" the man asked. "No names," she said. The man nodded as if that were fair. He tapped the page. "A gentleman of means wants an item returned, lost a sum. Says he wants only balance, not blood." "Always the balance," she said. "Always," the man agreed. "The world runs on it." "Show the seal," the cowboy said. The man turned the paper so the wax caught the light. A county seal, crisp, legal. "Who are you?" the cowboy asked. "A messenger," he said. "Sometimes called collector, sometimes called deputy. Depends who asks." "Badge?" she said. "Not required for a letter," he answered. She tilted her head. "But you brought one anyway." He smiled again. "I carry many things." The cowboy stood. He stepped between the paper and her line of sight. "What's owed?" he asked. The man lifted a brow. "You already know." "Say it." $80, the man said. "With fee. Due at dawn. Employer waits at the freight office. Then we all sleep." "80," the cowboy repeated. She spoke low. "For what debt?" The man's gaze slid to her. "A choice made in town," he said. "A rope cut. A sale interrupted. A man humiliated before witnesses. His pause was elegant. Some call it mercy, others call it theft. She didn't blink. What do you call it? Billable, he said. The cowboy's jaw worked. He kept his hands loose. You're early, he said. I prefer night, the man replied. Quieter. Safer, she said. For all, the man agreed. I'm not here to drag anyone. I'm here to receive the exact coins, or a promise that pays like coins. Paper promise? The cowboy asked. A signature, the man said. Bonded by your mark. 2 weeks. Interest slight. Terms gentle. Gentle like a noose, she said. The man inclined his head. A noose is sudden. Paper is patient. Wind shifted. Sparks drifted sideways. The cowboy stepped closer to her. His coat brushed her arm. A small shelter from the grit. We'll ride at dawn, he said. Pay in town. The man watched his face. You have 80. Enough. The man's eyes dipped to the cowboy's coat. He noticed the square shape beneath the fabric. You already carry the order, he said softly. Good, then nothing's hard. The girl's voice cut in. Hard begins when men bring paper to fires. The man considered her. I carry coffee too, he said. He set down a small tin with 2 cups. A courtesy. She didn't move. The cowboy poured anyway, handed her the first cup. Steam rose. Her fingers wrapped the metal. She drank, never looking away from the messenger. Who else rides with you? The cowboy asked. None, he said. Liar, she murmured. He smiled. I ride with the county. It rides with me. Badge then, the cowboy said. The man sighed as though it bored him. He reached into the folder. A small tin star clicked into his palm. It caught the firelight, then fell dull again. Deputy for 3 counties, he said. Temporary. Temporary like a storm, she said. Exactly, he replied. The cowboy set his cup down. Dawn, freight office. We'll be there. The man folded the paper, slid it back with care. Dawn is clean. People behave better with sun. Some don't change, she said. They do under numbers, he answered. He turned to leave, then paused. He looked at the cowboy's boots, at the tracks that led here, at the second set that had been bound and then freed. Your trail from the river shows haste, he said. If men follow the same trail, dawn may come early. We'll be ready, the cowboy said. Be paid, the man replied. He stepped back into the dark. His shape thinned to a line, then to nothing. The wind took his last word and carried it over the plain. They waited. The fire sighed and shuffled lower. She set the cup down gently. You meant to hand me in. He swallowed. I meant to stop a sale. Different aims, she said. I changed mine, he said. Words, she replied. He opened his coat, removed the folded paper, held it out to her. Read it, he said. She did not take it. Read it to me. He stared at the seal, at the neat script, at the amount, at his own name, and a blank line beneath. He read, slow, each word like grit. When he finished, she nodded once. No anger. Something older. What will you sell to pay it? She asked. My horse, he said. Then we walk, she said. I'll carry the packs, he said. You'll carry more than that, she said. They stood there, the night pressing around them like a narrow room. A sound rose from the ridge. Not boots, not hooves. A bell, 3 slow strikes, then silence. Her eyes hardened. Freight office bell, she said. They're not waiting for dawn. He turned to the dark. A second sound followed, paper slapping wood. A notice tacked fast, then the clink of metal. A badge glinted in the firelight, and a voice beyond the ridge read a name aloud. The voice rolled over the ridge slowly, like someone savoring the weight of each syllable. Samuel Clay. The cowboy froze. He had heard his name spoken in gunfights, in courtrooms, in backroom deals whispered over whiskey. But never like this, drawn out, official, stamped with the slow rhythm of a tolling bell, as if the land itself had signed the notice. The Apache girl stood beside him, her eyes on the fire, not the ridge. She didn't look surprised, just measuring. A second voice followed. younger, eager. Wanted by debt claim. Payment refused. The cowboy clenched his jaw. I didn't refuse. You didn't submit, she said quietly. They call that refusal. Boots crunched over stones beyond the ridge, more than one pair. The bell struck again, twice this time. A signal, not to summon payment, to begin a hunt. He looked at her. You ride with me now, they'll call that aiding. She didn't move. I don't ride behind men who still owe. He stepped forward, standing between her and the direction of the bell. Let me walk to them first, set terms, keep you from their papers. She tilted her head slightly. You think they came for terms? He opened his mouth, closed it. The bell struck once more. A pause. Then the clean, unmistakable slide of a rifle bolt chambering around. He could almost see it in the dark. A rifle pointed low, not yet raised. A warning posture, not an execution stance, not yet. The girl's voice was calm. They want you seen walking toward them, with your head down, papers visible. He stared at the folded warrant still clutched in his hand. That's how they prove ownership, she said. Make a man walk to them while they stay mounted. That way the story spreads right. His throat tightened. He looked at the firelight dancing against her face. She did not plead. She did not soften. She simply refused to be part of their script. He tucked the paper back into his coat. Not hidden, not displayed, neutral. We go together, she said. They'll mark you, he said. They already did, she replied. Every time I was made to stand in a ring while men counted coins. The bell rang again, short, impatient. A man's voice, sharp now, cut through the night. Clay! Step forward and present bond. He could see them now. 3 figures at the crest, silhouettes rimmed by moonlight, 2 mounted, 1 on foot. The mounted men wore the shine of law badges. The man on foot held a lantern high, casting long spears of light across the dry earth. Debt must be seen to be valid, the lantern man called. The cowboy took 1 slow step forward. The girl matched his pace. The men on the ridge noticed. The lantern tilted. She walks free, the lantern man called. Not under claim. The cowboy didn't answer. Wind scraped dust across their boots. The fire behind them hissed, struggling to stay alive. Clay, one of the mounted men barked. If you bring her, it changes the paper. The girl spoke, voice like flint. Then change it. The men shifted in their saddles. He could hear leather creak, the faint jingle of curb chains. 1 horse stamped, uncomfortable with the stillness. The lantern man lowered the light slightly, the glow now hitting their faces. He looked from the cowboy to the girl, trying to place her status. Property, witness, accomplice, or something he had no line for in his handbook. Does she stand as guarantee? He asked. The cowboy didn't speak. The girl did. I stand as proof. The men frowned, not understanding. She stepped past the cowboy, onto ground, lit by the lantern, her shadow stretched long behind her. You say men like him don't keep promise, she said. I say they can, if they choose. That's not legal standing, the lantern man said, voice tight. It's more than you ever had, she replied. The cowboy saw it then, the smallest crack in the collector's posture. Not fear, not respect, something worse for him. Uncertainty. The mounted man on the right shifted his rifle slightly, muzzle lowering a fraction, not out of mercy, but caution. She had changed the ground beneath their feet without touching a weapon. The lantern man exhaled, trying to regain control. Payment. Dawn. Freight office. Nothing more. No, she said. Here. Now. The cowboy's heart thudded once. Hard. Tonight, she continued, you take his word, or you take his blood. Choose. The 3 men did not move. The girl stepped forward 1 more pace, into full light. And in that moment, every man on the ridge had to confront an unfamiliar truth. She was not asking. She was setting terms. And the night held its breath, waiting to see who broke first. For a moment, no one spoke. The night itself seemed to tighten around them, the cold settling into the space between words. The lantern man adjusted his grip, jaw tensing. Girl, this is county matter. Men's matter. Step back. She didn't move. Then say it again. But this time, look at me when you do. The mounted rider on the left shifted uncomfortably. His horse tossed its head, sensing the tension that humans tried to pretend wasn't there. The cowboy stood half a step behind her now, not because he meant to hide, but because she had chosen to stand in front. The lantern man's eyes flicked to the cowboy. Control her. The cowboy didn't look away from the ridge. She doesn't belong to me. That a fact, the man said, skepticism dripping from each word. Because the papers we have say otherwise. Your papers lie, she said. They always do. The man's lantern cast harsh light across her face now. No fear, no trembling, only the quiet, unwavering defiance of someone who had already survived the worst thing men could do to her. The lantern man wet his lips, suddenly aware that every word he spoke might cost him more than he expected. I'm not here to debate. Then don't, she answered. Take his word now, or take his body. But don't pretend there's a third path. The cowboy felt every eye on him, 2 mounted riders, 1 lantern man, and her, standing like a stone in a river, letting their authority crash against her without moving. He stepped forward slowly until he stood beside her. The lantern light caught the edge of his coat, revealing the folded paper inside. His voice came out low, steady. You want bond? Take my word tonight. Sun hasn't risen. Day hasn't begun. Night still belongs to those who haven't chosen their side. The lantern man considered this. Your word, and he said, has weight only if it's witnessed and written. Then witness, she said, and write with your eyes. The rider on the right lifted his rifle again, slow, uncertain. The muzzle caught the moonlight. The girl glanced at it once and then back to the lantern man. You pull that trigger, she said softly, and you pay $80 in blood instead of coin, and the county won't refund you. Silence. The younger rider, nervous, lips tight, looked toward the older one. He wasn't ready for a decision like this, not with her staring right through him like she could see the moment his hands first touched a badge. The lantern man finally lowered his light just a fraction, the glow catching the dust swirling between them. Dawn, he repeated, voice slower now. You come to the freight office at first bell, with coin, or your bond is broken. The cowboy nodded once. The man looked at the girl. You walk separate, he said. If you walk at all. She held his gaze. We walk where we choose. A muscle twitched in the lantern man's cheek. He stepped back. The riders turned their horses. Leather groaned. Spurs clicked. Hooves began to move, not in retreat, but in controlled withdrawal. They didn't ride fast. They wanted the last image burned into the night to be one of authority, leaving on its own terms. The lantern man paused just before disappearing behind the ridge. Samuel Clay, he called once more. You have one night to prove your word means more than your debt. The cowboy didn't answer. The men vanished over the ridge. The bell rang once more far off, a final note. The night opened again, wide and breathing. The cowboy let out the breath he'd been holding. His shoulders dropped, tension bleeding out like heat. The girl looked at him, not accusing, not forgiving, just measuring again. $80, she said quietly. That's what freedom costs them. He met her eyes. I'll pay it. Another long pause. The fire cracked, tossing sparks into the air. Then she said it, soft, like testing steel. Then prove it. Not at dawn. Now. Her gaze dropped to the folded paper in his coat. Burn it. A gust of wind lifted the corner of his coat. The firelight flickered, waiting. The folded bond order sat pressed against his chest like a heartbeat, and for the first time all night, his hand trembled. His fingers hovered above the coat, brushing the edge of the paper like it might burn without flame. The fire popped behind them, a coal splitting in the heat. Sparks rose, drifting into the night like small, silent messengers. She stood still, eyes locked on his hand, not on him, not on his past, just on the paper that chained his promise to someone else's ledger. You said you're not like other men, she said, voice low. Other men keep papers, keep receipts, keep proof of ownership. Burn it. His jaw tightened. If I burn this, there's no record, no bond. No deal. She took a slow step toward him. the firelight catching the faint ember glow in her eyes. "There is no deal, only choice. Paper keeps men honest when their bones won't, but if your word breaks without it, then it was never worth anything." He felt the truth hit like a fist. He had spent years signing his name on contracts, on warrants, on transfer orders. Every mark he made turned his word into something sellable, something tradable. This was different. He reached into his coat. The paper slid free with a soft hiss, the wax seal catching the glow of the fire. He held it between two fingers, like something fragile or poisonous. She extended her hand, not to take it, but to steady his. Not a plea, not guidance, just presence. The kind that makes decisions real. He met her stare. "If I burn it, there's no turning back." "There never was," she said. Wind swept across the plain, bending the grass toward the fire like the land itself urging the flame to take something more. He knelt by the embers. For a heartbeat, he hesitated, hand suspended above the fire, paper trembling in the draught. Then he let it fall. The flame didn't roar. It didn't ignite with drama. It caught slow, curling the edges inward, turning letters into ash that drifted upward like tiny ghosts. The wax seal blistered, then cracked. The county seal warped, melted, vanished. He watched until the last scrap blackened and fell apart. The Apache girl watched too, still and unreadable. Only after the fire had consumed the final edge did she speak. "You have nothing to show them now." He stood slowly. "Then I'll face them with nothing but what I am." "You think that's enough?" she asked. He didn't answer. She stepped closer, so close the heat of the fire mixed with the warmth of her breath. "Men with badges don't care what a man is," she said. "They only care what they can write down." He met her gaze. "Then let them write the truth. Tonight, I chose my word over their paper." Her expression shifted, just a flicker, like a flame bending in wind. Then, without warning, she reached into the fire with a stick and stirred the ashes. The last embers glowed red against the black. "Then we walk before the ash cools," she said. He blinked. "Walk where?" "To the freight office," she said, "before dawn, before they can say you were dragged. We go on our feet, not brought." "You want to walk through the night," he said. "I've walked through worse," she replied. He nodded once, tight, resolute. He kicked dirt over the fire, dimming it until only a faint orange pulse remained. She slung a pack over her shoulder, movements clean and efficient, no hesitation, no glance back. He loaded the last strap, tightened the saddle one final time. The horse shifted, sensing tension thick in the air. She took one last look at the fire, now nothing more than a whisper of smoke curling into the cold sky. "Leave it," she said. "Let the night remember." They turned toward the open land. Far ahead, faint and distant, the bell rang once more, one final reminder that men were waiting with ink and iron. He adjusted the strap on his shoulder, glanced at her. "We walk." She stepped forward first. The night swallowed their footprints. They walked side by side, boots crushing frost-bitten grass, the night stretching wide and silent around them. The stars above were cold and sharp, scattered like shards of broken glass across the dark. Their breath fogged in the air, rising and fading just as quickly, the kind of cold that made every word feel heavier than it should. The freight office lay miles ahead, marked only by the faint glow of a lantern in the distance, flickering like a lighthouse for men who dealt in debt rather than mercy. She walked with steady steps, her pace even and unhurried, as though the world would bend to her rhythm rather than force her to rush. He matched her without question. "You could ride," he said quietly. "Save your strength." She didn't slow. "I ride when I choose." He nodded. "Fair." They walked another stretch in silence. Coyotes called somewhere to the east, their howls rising and falling in eerie harmony. The land seemed to listen. After a while, she spoke again. "Why did you burn it?" He didn't look at her. "Because I didn't want to use it. You could have handed me over clean," she said. "Blank paper. Clean guilt." "That's not clean," he said. She stopped walking. He took 2 more steps before he realized and turned back to face her. In the moonlight, her face looked carved from something ancient. The wind tugged at the loose strands of her hair, but she stood unmoved. "Then what is clean?" she asked. He didn't answer immediately. He looked out across the plain, the empty horizon, the dry grass whispering against his boots, the faint light ahead. He felt the absence of the paper in his coat, like a missing weapon. "Standing," he said at last, "on my own feet, without chains. Even invisible ones." She studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once, and they began walking again. The lantern light of the freight station grew larger now, flickering between the worn wooden planks of the structure ahead. A low windmill creaked slowly nearby, its blades turning with a sound like an old hinge groaning in protest. As they neared the last dip in the land before the station, she slowed. "Someone waits," she said. He scanned the dark. At first he saw nothing, then just a shape. A figure seated on a crate near the platform, motionless, head bowed like a preacher in prayer. He rested a hand on the reins, though the horse walked behind them without protest. "Could be a station guard. Could be a bullet with a hat," she said. He allowed himself a thin, humorless breath. "Feels like both." They approached the platform. The figure didn't stand, didn't move, just sat there, hands clasped, hat low. The lantern above the station door swayed slightly in the wind, casting slow, circling shadows. The girl stepped ahead of him, closing the final steps with calm precision. She stopped just short of the platform's shadow. The seated man lifted his head. Moonlight caught the glint of something pinned to his chest. A badge. Not the same as the collector's. Different shape, older design. The man's voice came soft, almost regretful. "You're early." The cowboy's hand dropped from the reins. "You ringing that bell?" The man shook his head. "Bell rings for all debtors. For witnesses, too." The girl looked at him steadily. "Which are you?" "Once a debtor," he said. "Now a witness." The cowboy stepped closer, muscles coiled. "Speak plain." The man lifted a folded cloth from his lap. Inside it lay a metal key, not to a cell, but to a registry box, the kind used to store official notices. "They want your signature," the man said. "They want you on record." "I burned the record," the cowboy said. The man nodded once. "Then you walk in with nothing. That scares them more." The girl's voice was quiet but cutting. "Then why sit in our path?" "To give warning," he said. "Of what?" she asked. The man looked from her to the cowboy, his eyes tired, almost mournful. "Paper isn't the only thing they carry," he said. "They brought rope, too." A long silence fell between them, heavy and cold. "Not for debt," the man continued softly. "For example." The cowboy's stomach tightened. He knew what that meant. "They don't just want payment," the man said. He looked at the girl. "They want to make a lesson." She didn't blink. The cowboy's hand flexed once at his side. The windmill behind the station creaked again. Somewhere behind the freight office, a second lantern flickered to life. Then a third, then footsteps, and the sound of rope being pulled taut, the sound of rope sliding through calloused hands, carried farther in the cold than a shout would have. Slow, deliberate, like someone preparing a stage, not a gallows. The kind of rope work that wasn't rushed, the kind meant to be seen. The cowboy's boots shifted in the dirt. The girl didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the freight office where the second and third lanterns now glowed like watchful eyes. "How many?" the cowboy asked, voice low. The seated man didn't answer immediately. He looked at the lanterns instead, as if counting shadows more than men. "Enough to make you walk differently," he said. "Enough to hang one and pardon another," she said. The man's silence confirmed it. The cowboy's breath came out hard. "They mean to scare off others." "Make me example." "No," she said. "Make us an example." The man straightened slightly. "They didn't expect you to burn the paper. They expected you to beg." "I don't beg," the cowboy said. The girl's eyes flicked to him, unreadable. "Not yet," she said. The freight office door creaked open. A figure stepped into the lantern light. Not the collector from before, someone heavier, with the posture of a sheriff used to speaking from porches rather than saddles. He looked down at them as if they were already on the platform, already bound. His voice rolled out flat and official. "Samuel Clay, step forward." The cowboy stayed where he stood. The sheriff didn't raise his voice. "This night ends with coin or confession." Choose your walk." She stepped forward first. The sheriff's gaze narrowed. "She speaks for you now." The girl didn't lift her chin. "He speaks with deeds," she said. "I only watch." The sheriff's eyes moved to the man still seated on the crate. "You gave warning," he said. The seated man didn't deny it. "You taught me to," he said. "You said a man deserves to know if rope waits ahead." The sheriff studied him, then let it go. The cowboy moved up beside the girl. "I burned your bond," he said. A ripple moved through the shadows near the office, men shifting, uncertain. He could smell iron again, cold and metallic. The sheriff's expression didn't change. "Paper burns. Debt doesn't." The girl took one step onto the wooden platform. The sound of her boot against the plank was a kind of declaration. "You said coin or confession," she said. "Coin is gone. Paper is ash. So ask him his confession." The sheriff's gaze slid to her slowly. "Confession is spoken by the debtor." The cowboy met the sheriff's eyes. "Then ask." The sheriff stepped closer, lantern light cutting across his badge, his eyes dark beneath the brim of his hat. "Speak it plain," he said. "Say what you did tonight." The cowboy's voice came steady, though the shadows around them seemed to tighten like a closing fist. "I cut a noose," he said. The sheriff's jaw moved slightly. "I cut a noose," the cowboy repeated, louder. "Not rope around a neck. The other kind, the quieter kind. The kind men tie with coin and law and shame." The wind caught the freight office sign above them, making it creak like wood under strain. The sheriff's eyes flicked to the girl. "And her." The cowboy didn't look at her. "She walks on her own feet. No man owns that." The sheriff shifted his stance. "You vow that in front of witnesses?" "In front of anyone," the cowboy said. The sheriff looked past them into the dark. Men stepped forward from the shadows now, 6 in total. Some wore stars, some didn't. But all watched. The sheriff lifted his hand. The rope sound stopped. He spoke slowly. "Then, if your word is your bond, you won't run from the sun." The cowboy nodded. The sheriff's eyes locked on his. "When the bell rings at dawn, you step onto this platform. You stand where the ledger is read. You look men in the eye when they say your name. You do not bow your head." The cowboy's breath left him in a slow exhale. "I'll stand." The sheriff looked at the girl last. "And you?" he asked. She didn't break eye contact. "I'll see if his word stands taller than the rope." The sheriff gave the smallest nod, as if acknowledging something rare, something he didn't have room to name. Then he turned to his men. "No rope tonight," he said. A murmur traveled through them, some disappointed, some relieved, all uneasy. The sheriff's shadow stretched long across the platform as he stepped back. "Dawn," he said. "Bell rings once." He paused before going inside. "Make sure your feet are ready to carry what your mouth just swore." The door closed behind him. The lanterns stayed lit, and in the quiet that followed, the girl turned to the cowboy. "Now," she said, "we wait where men can see us. No hiding, no fire. Just ground." He nodded, but his pulse thundered like hooves against dry earth, because hiding was always easier than being seen. And dawn was coming. They stayed in the open, just as she said. No fire, no cover, no wall at their backs. Only dirt, wind, and the slow turning of the night sky above them. The lanterns along the freight office flickered like watchful eyes, never fully going dark. Men moved inside, shadows crossing the windows, their voices low but steady. Preparing ink, ledger, rope, just in case dawn brought more than words. The cowboy sat with his back straight, every muscle awake. Sleep would not come, even if invited. He kept his coat open, the absence of the paper like an exposed wound on his chest. She remained standing. Her silhouette, tall and still against the moonlight, looked carved from something older than law. She faced the direction of the ridge, where the bell tower stood silent now, waiting to strike again. He finally spoke. "You're not tired." "Tired keeps," she said. "Fear doesn't." He looked up at her. "You think I'll break when they speak my name again?" She didn't flinch. "I think names spoken in daylight feel heavier than at night." He let that settle. A faint wind moved across the plain, brushing against their coats. Somewhere nearby, a nightbird let out a short, sharp cry. Horses shifted in their sleep near the hitching rails, their tack softly clinking. The seated man from earlier, the one who had warned them, remained by the crate. He hadn't gone inside with the others. He hadn't left either, just watched, like someone who had once stood in the same place and chosen differently. "You were debtor once," the girl said to him, not turning. He nodded slowly. "Yes." "What did you do when dawn came?" she asked. The man's eyes stayed on the ground. It took him a moment to speak. "I lowered my head," he said quietly. "Made it easier for them." "And after?" she asked. His voice thinned. "After, I walked smaller, even after debt was paid." Silence followed. The girl's gaze returned to the horizon. "Then this one won't lower." The man looked at the cowboy. "You think you can hold your head high when they read the fine print? When they say the part that stings louder than the price?" The cowboy met his eyes. "Let them say it." The man nodded slowly, not approval, not quite pity. Something between. He stood, brushed off his coat, and walked a few paces away, leaving them to their vigil. They remained side by side on the cold earth. The night thinned. A slight paling of the eastern sky hinted at the coming line of light that would cut everything open. She finally sat, folding her legs slowly, deliberate as a ritual. "You chose fire," she said. "That makes them angry." He nodded once. "Burning paper makes law feel weak. And men don't forgive when law feels weak," she said. He glanced toward the freight office. "Will they hang me?" "Not in daylight," she said. "They'll try to shame first. Rope comes when shame doesn't bend you." He absorbed that. Dawn crept closer, a faint grey edge pushing back the stars. The sky above them shifted, deep blue turning to iron. "You can still walk away," he said, "before the bell rings." She looked at him then, eyes steady. "You think I follow you?" He hesitated. "I follow the fire," she said. "You lit one tonight. Paper burns fast, but men remember flame." He exhaled, something like relief or fear leaving his chest. The wind changed again, colder now, carrying the smell of ink and oil and rope from the freight office. Dawn pulled itself over the horizon like a curtain, slow but unstoppable. A single lantern in the freight office window flickered, brighter than the rest. Then a bell rope shifted. Wood groaned. Metal rang once, sharp and final. She stood before he did. The cowboy rose too, coat settling around his shoulders like armor that wasn't there. She looked at him, not as judge or prisoner, but as witness. "Walk," she said. And they moved toward the platform, where Law waited with ink, and Rope waited just out of sight. The bell's echo rolled over the ground like distant thunder. The sound wasn't loud, but it carried weight, announcing more than morning, announcing judgment. Men were already gathering in front of the freight office, some still fixing coats, others leaning against posts like they were there by chance, not by design. But their eyes said otherwise. They had come to watch. Not to kill, not yet, to witness. The cowboy walked forward, each step deliberate, refusing to hurry, refusing to slow. She walked a half step behind him, not shadowed, not hidden, present, measured. The sheriff stood on the platform, ledger under one arm, a deputy to each side. The rope coiled on a barrel near the wall wasn't raised, but it wasn't far. Its presence alone spoke a language older than any written law. The sheriff's voice came low, carrying across the cold air. "Samuel Clay, present yourself." The cowboy reached the base of the platform and stopped just below it. He kept his head level. "I'm here." The sheriff looked him over, eyes lingering on the empty space inside his coat where paper should have been. "You bring no bond?" The cowboy nodded once. "I bring my word." The sheriff flipped open the ledger. "You were given paper. Paper burns. Word fades." The girl stepped forward then, onto the first plank of the platform. The wood creaked beneath her boot. The deputies shifted slightly, not sure whether to block or allow her step. She did not ask permission. "Let him speak before you write," she said. All eyes turned. The sheriff studied her long, then closed the ledger a moment. "Speak," he said. The cowboy didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on the sheriff. "I took coins meant to buy a girl," he said. "Then I used them to cut her loose instead." There was a murmur in the crowd. Not surprise, recognition. The sheriff tapped the ledger with his finger. Law counts coins, not intentions. I count what kind of man I walk as, the cowboy said. And what kind is that? The sheriff asked. The cowboy didn't flinch. One who breaks the right rule instead of obeying the wrong one? Silence, heavy, thick as smoke. The sheriff's deputy on the left shifted his stance. Words are wind. Wind makes fire spread, she said quietly. The sheriff's eyes flicked to her, then back to the cowboy. You owe $80. The cowboy nodded. Then I walked to earn it, with back and hands, not paper. It takes a month to earn that, the sheriff said. Then I work a month. And if you fail, then I stand again, same place, same rope. The sheriff held his gaze. Then, and her. The girl didn't look away. I stand too. The sheriff considered it, then slowly opened the ledger again. Ink glistened fresh on the page. I will write one line, he said. Not a sentence. Not a sentence you hang from. Just a line. He dipped the pen. The cowboy waited. The pen touched paper with a long, slow stroke. Then the sheriff spoke aloud as he wrote, voice even, ritualistic. Debt unpaid at dawn. Man standing. Witness present. The ink dried on the page like blood turning dark. He closed the ledger. The deputy nearest the rope tensed. The sheriff didn't look at him. No rope. The deputy hesitated. Sir. No rope, the sheriff repeated. The deputy's jaw tightened, but he stepped back. The sheriff looked at the cowboy. There is a work post by the rail spur. No fence, no guard, only wait. You haul until coin matches debt. The cowboy nodded. I'll haul. The sheriff looked at the girl last. And you? She met his eyes. I won't carry coin. I carry witness. The sheriff gave the smallest nod, as if that word, witness, held more power than they liked to admit. He closed the ledger fully. Then stand as such. The cowboys around the freight office, men who had come to watch something break, shifted uneasily. This wasn't the spectacle they wanted, but the sheriff had spoken. And in law that survives past gunfire, spoken word mattered more than rope. The sheriff stepped back. Begin. The cowboy turned. She walked beside him without a word, and as the freight office bell fell silent, the work began, not to pay a debt, but to prove whether a man's word could weigh more than the rope waiting in the shade. The work post by the rail spur stood in the open. No walls, no shelter, just a stack of iron track lengths waiting to be hauled to the line where a new stretch of railway would soon cut across Apache land like a scar. Each piece weighed more than a man should carry alone. That was the point. Debt was meant to be felt in the spine, not just the purse. The foreman stood beside the pile, a wide man with a tobacco pouch and eyes like dull iron. He looked the cowboy over, then glanced at the girl, confusion marking his face. She ain't on ledger, he said. She's witness, the cowboy replied. The foreman squinted. Witness don't haul. She don't haul, the cowboy repeated. The foreman spat into the dirt. Then haul. The cowboy stepped toward the iron. The first bar lay cold and unforgiving, catching the dawn light on its rough surface. He wrapped his hands around it, feeling the bite of rust and steel. His shoulders tightened as he lifted, the weight dragging at his arms like chained guilt. He didn't look back. The girl didn't speak. She stood a few paces away, arms folded, observing everything. The men watching from the freight office, the deputies lingering near the rope, the sheriff with his ledger still tucked under arm. Every time he lifted a length of track and staggered toward the rail, the ground trembled beneath his boots. Sweat began to line his brow despite the cold morning air. His breath came sharper, more visible with each haul. A group of townsmen gathered near the fence, murmuring, "That's a month's work. He'll break by sundown. Or beg paper back." The girl turned slightly, their voices reaching her. She didn't glare, didn't threaten. She only said one line, "Watch him." The murmurs quieted. The foreman dropped another piece of track with a metallic thud. "Debt's heavy," he said without looking up. The cowboy lifted again, his muscles trembled, but his steps stayed even. He placed the iron down beside the first, then went back. The girl knelt in the dirt with a stick. She began drawing a long line in the ground, slow, careful. like carving a mark that would remain long after footprints blew away. The cowboy hauled another beam. The sun rose higher, warming nothing. Each length of track felt heavier than the last, but he didn't stop. He moved like a man not paying debt, but proving something older. By the time the sun cleared the ridge fully, his hands were shaking, raw skin cracking where rust bit. His breath came hard, but still, he walked. Men who had come expecting him to beg began to shift, their expressions changing. One of the younger deputies looked away, uncomfortable. The sheriff approached quietly, ledger tucked against his hip. "You can stop," he said. The cowboy didn't pause. "Debt's not paid." "You've stood," the sheriff said. "You've hauled—" "Law says," other girl stood, cutting him off. "Law said rope last night." The sheriff looked at her, then at the cowboy, dragging another track. "Man can break," he said. "Bone breaks easier than pride." The cowboy reached the pile, bent, lifted again. His knees nearly buckled. She stepped forward, not to help, but to stand where he could see her, not in pity, in recognition. His eyes met hers. No words passed. He lifted again. The sheriff watched, something flickering across his face. He closed the ledger without writing. Behind them, the foreman paused his work. The deputies stood silent. Even the wind seemed to hold for a moment. The cowboy staggered to the rail and let the iron fall into place. His chest heaved, breath ragged. The sheriff spoke, his voice low but carrying, "Stop!" The cowboy straightened, barely. The sheriff's eyes hardened, but not unkindly. "Debt paid." A murmur swept through the watchers. Not agreement, not protest. Something closer to respect they didn't yet know how to carry. The sheriff turned, nodding once to the girl. Witness acknowledged. Then he looked back at the cowboy. "You burned their paper," he said. "Now you stand on your own." The cowboy's breath steadied. The girl's voice came quiet but final. "Then there is nothing left to pay." The wind moved again. The rope near the freight office hung slack, forgotten. For the first time since night fell, the cowboy felt the ground beneath him as something solid, not a stage, not a court, not a place of hanging, but a place where a man could stand and not bow. The sun had fully claimed the sky now, washing the land in a pale, unforgiving light. No shadows to hide behind, no dusk to blur intentions. Everything stood in plain sight. Iron, sweat, the rope coiled and unused, and two figures who refused to lower their heads. The men who had gathered to watch drifted back toward the freight office in uneven clusters, speaking in low tones, glancing back as if uncertain whether the moment was over or had only just begun. The cowboy stood breathing slowly, chest still rising heavy from the work. His hands were torn open across the palms, blood mingling with rust. He didn't wipe them. He didn't hide them. He let the wounds show for what they were, earned, not inflicted. The foreman gave a grunt, less dismissive than before. "Could have asked for tally stamp," he muttered. "Most men do." The cowboy didn't respond. The foreman spat into the dirt again. "Didn't think you'd carry that weight clean. Thought you'd talk your way into softer work." "He didn't talk," she said. "He lifted." The foreman looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once and walked away, his boots thudding against the dry planks of the platform. Not approval, but acknowledgement. A deputy approached next, the young one, whose rifle had trembled the night before. He hesitated before speaking. "You could leave now," he said, "before they decide something else." The cowboy met his gaze. "And prove their paper mattered." The deputy swallowed. "You made your stand." "No," she said. "He's making it." The deputy looked between them, then stepped back, uneasy. He didn't understand, not fully, but something in him recognized the weight of what stood before him. He rejoined the others without another word. Only the sheriff remained near, ledger unopened now, arms folded as if waiting for something more than just coin or confession. He watched them in silence for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "You could have walked before dawn, no eyes on you. No rope waiting." The cowboy nodded. "I know." "You didn't," the sheriff stated, not asking. "No," the cowboy said. The sheriff studied him, searching for false pride, for performance, for anything that smelled like theatrics. He found none. Then he looked at her. "You hold no debt." She didn't step back. "I hold memory. That weighs more." The sheriff nodded slowly, the faintest sign of respect crossing his eyes. "Then carry it, both of you. But hear me now, memory spreads. Men will talk." She held his gaze. "Let them." The sheriff's mouth tightened, but he didn't argue. He turned slightly, just enough to show he was done, but before stepping away, he paused. "Debt is settled," he said. "By law." He looked again at her. "But witness still walks, and witness remembers more than law does." With that, he closed the ledger, not with ceremony, but with finality. He walked back toward the freight office. The men followed, leaving the platform and the workpost behind. Only the seated man from the night before lingered a moment longer. He watched the cowboy, saw the blood on his palms, the steady set of his shoulders, the quiet defiance in the way he stood without leaning. He met the girl's eyes. She met his without blinking. Then, instead of speaking, the man reached into his coat and pulled something from inside. A folded strip of cloth, worn from use, marked with ink and soot. He didn't explain its purpose. He simply laid it on a crate near them. "For the hands," he said quietly. The cowboy didn't reach for it. Not yet. The man nodded once, like someone who understood the choice. Then he walked away, leaving the cloth and the platform behind. Silence settled again, not empty, but full. The girl stepped forward, picking up the strip of cloth. She examined it, then looked at the cowboy's torn palms. "Hold them out," she said. He hesitated only a second, then did. She wrapped the cloth around his hand, pulling it tight, not gentle, not harsh, just firm. Binding, sealing. When she finished, she looked at him, her voice low. "Men burn paper. Fire burns quick." She tied the last knot. "But flesh remembers longer." He looked down at the cloth, stained now with his blood and soot. She stepped back. Tracks of iron lay behind him. Tracks of law lay behind them all. What lay ahead, neither of them named. But both felt the shift. A man without paper, a girl without chains, and the land, waiting. The horizon shimmered under the rising heat, a wavering line between what had been endured and what waited ahead. No one stopped them now. No lawman, no deputy, no foreman. The freight office door had closed. The ledger tucked away like a gun returned to its holster, not because peace had come, but because a different kind of judgment had been made. The cowboy flexed his bandaged hands once, feeling the sting run through the cuts like fire trailing over nerve. He didn't hide the wince. Pain now was part of truth. She walked slightly ahead, not leading him, not following, just moving in a line parallel to his stride, like two tracks laid side by side, the kind trains follow, the kind that change the land permanently. The freight office bell rang once more behind them, but this time it didn't sound like a threat, it sounded like acknowledgement. They reached the edge of town where the dry creek cut the earth like a scar. He paused there, breath steady now, blood drying on the cloth. She didn't turn. "You leaving?" she asked without looking back. "Was thinking on it," he said. She finally faced him. "Men always think of leaving when work is done." He nodded. "Debt paid, law turned, nothing left to bind me here." "Only one thing binds," she said. "Choice." He stepped forward. "And if I choose to walk?" Her eyes held his. "Then walk. But walk knowing men saw you stand. And they will measure your next steps against this morning." His jaw tightened. "You asking me to stay?" "I don't ask men," she said. "I watch them." The wind swept across the creek bed, lifting dust in spirals. The sky had fully brightened now, a harsh wash of daylight that left nothing obscured. The world was raw in its honesty. He looked down at the creek, remembering how he had found her once before, tied and silent, with coin-changing hands while men turned away. That memory cut deeper than the wounds in his palms. "I burned their paper," he said. "You did it," she replied. "I stood on their platform," he said. "You did." "I hauled their iron, paid their debt without coin." "You did." Silence stretched. Then she asked the one thing law could not write. "Then what are you now?" He opened his mouth, but no word came. Not outlaw, Not savior, not debtor, not free. Just a man. He looked at her, dust swirling between them like smoke from the fire they had left behind. "What do you see?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she moved past him, stepping down into the creek bed. The dry sand sank beneath her boots. She knelt and pressed her hand into the dirt. "This ground remembers footsteps," she said. "It remembers who walked bent and who walked straight." She stood again, brushing sand from her hand. "Next step writes more than paper." He felt it then, not a command, not mercy, an opening. She turned her back to him, facing open land, and spoke the only words that mattered now. "Then don't follow me," she said. "Walk beside me." The cowboy stood there for a long moment, the echo of that choice ringing louder than any bell. Then he stepped forward, not behind, not ahead, beside, and the ground, dry and waiting, took their weight like a promise. They moved across the land without urgency now. No rope at their backs, no paper burning holes in his coat, no eyes waiting to count coin or witness shame, just earth beneath their boots, stretching wide and unbroken. The freight office shrank behind them until it was nothing more than a shape against the horizon, a place where names had been spoken, and where, for once, shame had not bent a spine. The sun climbed higher. Light burned the frost from the grass. The world took on that sharp clarity that only comes after survival, when colors feel too bright and breath feels too full in the chest. She walked with her gaze forward, scanning the ridges like someone who had always read the land better than words. He walked beside her, bandaged hands flexing as blood returned to numbed skin. His steps no longer carried the weight of a man watched, only the rhythm of someone choosing his own direction. Behind them, the bell tower stood silent. Ahead, no road waited, only land, only choice. A few yards ahead, she stopped. He slowed too. She crouched near a patch of dry earth and drew a small line in the sand with the tip of her finger. He watched, frowning slightly. Then it clicked. Last night, she'd drawn a line by the workpost, a line in the dirt while he hauled iron, a witness mark, a simple record, not made of ink, but of presence. He knelt beside her. Without speaking, he dragged his own fingertip through the sand next to hers. Parallel lines, pressed into the earth. 2 tracks. She looked at them, not smiling, but something in her shoulders eased. The tension that had kept her spine straight through fire and law, finally releasing just enough to breathe. "Tracks last," she said quietly, "even when men forget." He nodded, eyes on the sand. "And if wind takes them?" he asked. She answered without hesitation. "Then we leave more." The wind picked up again, brushing at the marks they'd made, not erasing them, just softening the edges, blending them into the land, like memory, fading on the surface, but pressed deep beneath. She stood. He rose beside her. No further words were needed. 2 figures walked across the horizon. No rope at their backs, no paper in his coat, only the ground beneath them and a sky wide enough to hold what law could not write. And somewhere in a freight office ledger, a line remained unchanged. Debt unpaid at dawn, man standing, witness present, a record not of guilt, but of a man who chose fire over contract, weight over shame, tracks over paper, a man who did not walk ahead, and a witness who refused to walk behind. Their steps faded into the wind, but the land remembered. If this story made your chest tighten, if you felt the dust of that road and heard the bell in the distance, then don't ride out alone. Out here, we follow the tracks of those who choose honor over paper, fire over silence. Every tale in this land holds another hidden road, another man tested, another girl who refuses to bow. And when the next sun rises, another name will be called. So tighten your saddle, wipe the dust from your boots, and stay with us for the next ride. Subscribe, so when the bell rings again, you'll be there to hear it.